have any advice for people who are being assessed or considering like the funding that they might be entitled to?
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned earlier around the disabled students allowance, that was the foundation of my support. So to access a disabled student allowance, it is a case of kind of getting the dyslexia assessment and then applying through Student Finance England for the disabled student allowance. And what you do with that is you submit your assessment to them, and then they would complete that needs assessment with you. So they'd invite you to, it's almost like an interview, almost like a consultation. And please do bear with me, this is my experience from 2015, so it could have changed now. They might have a different style, especially with COVID. But we sat down in a room and discussed the themes from the dyslexia assessment. And again, this was very much looking at what I struggled with as opposed to looking at what I was good at. So it was really looking at actually, I write really slowly, it hurts my hand, and it can be quite unreadable at times. So through that conversation about how that felt for me, how that impacts my work, they then suggested getting a dictaphone. And the same with kind of linear thinking. I really struggle with that. I can dot to and fro and then forget where my origin point was and never make it back there, which is why they then suggested the bubble map software.
What would you advise for people going for these assessments?
So, I mean, I applied for university straight out of college, and at that time, I didn't really have a full understanding of what dyslexia was, more generally, and then kind of more specifically for me, what my learning style was, how I process information, but more importantly, what works for me, what are my strengths, how do I learn as an individual. So when it did come to having that meeting, we were focusing kind of on the disadvantages. I couldn't promote what I knew worked for me. So the person who led that meeting primarily led the whole needs assessment, as it were. And I also didn't know what was available. So in terms of different softwares, different technologies, being able to get a dyslexia tutor, that was something that I pushed for when I was at uni, kind of already had the DSA package, learned about it, needed it, had a lot of support to get her. So it would be kind of taking that time to sit down and reflect on your learning journey. And this doesn't have to be in education. This can be kind of how have you learned outside of education as well.